Hi everyone, welcome to the Coolest Projects Games webinar. We're really glad you could join us today. We've got a great session lined up where you'll be getting hands-on with some code to start making your own games, perfect for entering into Coolest Projects. I'm joined today by Mac, one of our learning managers at the Raspberry Pi Foundation. Hey Mac. He's going to walk you through a really fun project using the MakeCode editor, and it's full of great ideas that you can build on. But before we dive in, I just want to take a moment to talk about Coolest Projects itself, what it's about, why we run it, and how you can take part. If you're 18 or under, you can take part. It's really open. You can make a project of your own or with a team of up to 5 people, and it can use any kind of hardware or software that you like. So what is Coolest Projects? Well, it's all about celebrating the brilliant things that young people create with technology. If you're 18 or under, you can take part. It's really open. You can make a project on your own or with a team of up to 5, and it can use any kind of hardware or software that you like. You can make a project in one of our 7 categories, and today we're focused on games. You can either make something new, like we'll be doing in this session, or enter something you've already created that you're proud of. Either way, it's a chance to get involved, get recognized, and have some fun with your coding. There are 2 ways to get involved. The first is our big online showcase, where young people from anywhere in the world can share their creations. You'll get feedback, a certificate, and there's a brilliant live stream where we highlight loads of fantastic projects. Last year, we saw over 4,000 projects from more than 7,000 young people in 43 countries, so it's truly global. The second way is through in-person events in selected countries. You can check out which ones are running and how to join on our Take Part page, which is scrolling just at the bottom of this video. The key thing to remember is that registration is open right now as this video goes out, so this is the moment to get started. There are so many different reasons to make your own project and loads of different directions you can take it. So today is the perfect chance to get started. I'm going to hand over to Mac now, who's going to take you through building a fun game project, packed with useful tips and ideas for your own creations. So over to you, Mac.
Thanks, Nick. Really great to be here. I'm really excited to show you guys Microsoft MakeCode Arcade. We're going to use it today to create an airplane side-scrolling game, and hopefully along the way figure out if you would like to make a version of this game for your Coolest Projects entry, or how you can maybe use some of these concepts that are used in the game in your projects. So let's see what it looks like. So this is the airplane side-scroller game. So you control this airplane, moving it up and down. There are some bats that you need to avoid. If you crash into them, you'll see you lose lives at the top. And there is a score counting up in this sort of top right corner here as well. There are some power-ups. So these red ones here, when you crash into them, they give you 50 points. And there are also some slightly more rare. So we use some random chance, but there are some rare life orbs that you will also see. The bats are placed randomly. The plane can't go outside of the screen. So we have to stay within the bounds of the screen. And it will just keep going until you lose all of your lives. So MakeCode Arcade is a really cool tool that's based on similar sort of coding principles to the MakeCode microbit environment, right? So if you've made anything for the microbit, you'll be sort of somewhat familiar with how this works, but we're going to take you into that and show you it. What's really cool about this game is there's lots of random chance. You get a chance to do some animation. I don't know if you can see the airplane is sort of slightly animated, right? Moving from side to side. It gets more difficult. Hopefully you see that we're going faster as the game goes on. There are some sound effects, there are lives, there are so many great concepts in here that I think you can use in your games. So we're going to really dive into it. And I think at the end of this as well, you could really take this game and sort of make it your own, theme it on a project that you're really interested in, or use some of the concepts to create your own game for Coolest Projects, which I think will be really awesome to see. I don't know what my high score possibly would be for this, but I'm going to keep going. I want to see one of the sort of life orbs come back, because I really need that 3rd life back. There's a life orb. There you go. See, just got my life back. So yeah, and then if I sort of crash into 3 bats, you'll see I lose my lives. And then I get a game over screen. So if you go to arcade.makecode.com, you will get a new sort of project screen here. Like you can see, there are loads of tutorials. So if you're new to this tool, and once you use, after this, you find that you're very interested, you want to use it, you can use any of these sort of tutorials to get you started. But I'm going to show you how you can kind of make a game in about 20 minutes today that will sort of set you up really nicely for I call this project's entry to make it your own. So it doesn't take loads of time to create something really, really cool. In this case, we want to create a new project. So I'm going to click on this new project button up here, and I'm going to give my project a name. So I'm going to call it Airplane Game. Okay, you can call it whatever, right? So if you wanted to theme it on something else, you can maybe call it something else. But I'm going to call mine Airplane Game. And we also have some options here. So you might only want to do Python or JavaScript, but we're going to use the block-based programming that is similar to what you may have used with microbit. So we're going to keep that as blocks, JavaScript, and Python. And then we'll click Create. And then MakeCode will make us a little empty game screen here. So just to give you guys a little bit of a tour, this over here is the preview screen, right? So if any of you have used Scratch before, and this is sort of like the stage, right? It's where we get to preview the things that we're making. And in this case, it looks a bit like a game controller, right? So that we can control our game. So inbuilt, we've got this sort of joystick over here that we can move around. We've got some A, B buttons and a reset. We also have some options along the bottom here that allow us to sort of stop our game running, to reset it. We can debug if we want to. And it gives us some other sort of input options as well. Again, if any of you have used sort of microbit in the past, if you've made any projects on that, this should look very familiar to you because it's very similar to the layout for the microbit editor. Then we've got the sort of coding area over here, right, where we've got one block already, which I'll talk to you about what onStart means in a little bit. But this is where our code goes. So as we sort of build our game, we're going to build up our code in this sort of area over here. We've then got our colored drawers. So again, very similar to sort of Scratch or microbit. These are where all the different blocks are that we can use to create our game. And they are grouped by color, but also by their function, right? So these are all about game sprites, which are the pictures that you see in a game. We have stuff to do with using the controller. So when we want to get input, we have things to control the game, things to control the scene, variables, any math we want to do. All that is contained in these sort of code drawers here. And we also have some more advanced ones down the bottom. Now, the last couple bits are, we have a button here to sort of download our game. So if you want to download and run it separately, we can do that. And we can also change the name of our game down here. So that is the MakeCode Arcade editor. When you first do this, you can go through a tutorial and it'll sort of take you through all these bits, but that is the basic components. Now, let's start making our game. So we have this block here called onStart, which is really important. So in games, we generally want to do things at the beginning. So when we hit play, when our code starts running, we want to do some stuff. But then we also have this on-game update block, right? So this onStart happens at the beginning, at the very start of our game. An on-game update happens every frame. Now, for videos or video games, because they are constantly updating, right, as we see things moving on screen, we are constantly updating the picture that we're seeing. And because there's lots of pictures going one after another, right, it creates a sort of moving video feel to the whole thing. Now, an update will run as each one of those frames goes. You might have heard frame rate spoken about sometimes for like PC gamers and stuff when they want to play their games. They want a high frame rate so that their game is updating very quickly. But yeah, so that's when game update will run. So first, we're going to just deal with this onStart, right? So at the moment, we just have a blank screen. So let's see if we can create something out. We can put something on our screen to start with. So I think the very first thing is let's add a background. So I'm going to go into scene and I'm going to choose to set my background image. Now, if I click on this empty box here, it'll let me either draw an image. So there's this editor that allows you to sort of draw your own image if you wanted to, But what's great about MakeCode Arcade is that there are also lots of options in the gallery here for us to choose from. So I'm making an airplane game. So I want to choose something that looks like where an airplane maybe would be flying. So there's some good ones here about sort of, it looks like an aquatic background, there's a forest background. But I quite like this city one over here, right? So there's this cityscape, so I can choose that. And that will sort of bring it into my editor. So I can change things if I wanted to. So I can kind of change the color of things on here if I wanted to. But I'm happy with that image as is. So now I'm just going to click this X up the top here. And now if I hit play, you should see that I have a background image. So there we go. We've gone from blank screen to something at least. Now let's see if we can get our plane in and have it controlled. So to add our plane, we're going to add a sprite. Right, so as I said, sprites are pictures that move around in your game, right? So again, you might be familiar from the word sprite from Scratch, right, where you have different sprites on your stage. But in games, sprites are basically any moving images, right? So the background is not a sprite, but the sort of things that would be moving on the screen are. So we're going to grab this set block up the top here because that allows us to create a new sprite. And we're going to drag it into our on start block. Now, it wants to call our sprite my sprite. Now, we could use that, but it's going to be kind of hard to track later which sprite we're talking about. So we're going to give that a bit of a better name by making a new variable. And I'm going to call this airplane. Okay. So now what I need to do is I need to choose an image. So just like with the background images, I can click on that square and that'll bring up the editor. So I could draw a character if I wanted to. But I'm also just going to go to the gallery and look at all of these amazing options for us, right? We have a duck here. We've got some people. Now you might think, why are there so many pictures of the same person? And that's so that we can animate it, which I'll show you at the end of the game. But I'm going to scroll down because there's this really nice airplane image here. Look, so I'm going to exit that. And we'll see now that the airplane has just been put in the middle of my stage, or of my preview. Now, I want to move my airplane because my airplane is going to be flying from left to right across the screen. So I want to move my airplane so that it's over on the left side of the screen. So I'm going to go into my sprites drawer, and then I can change the position of my sprite using this set block here. So it says set, and then we don't want to set the position of my sprite. Instead, I want to set the position of airplane, which is the name of my character sprite up here. And then I can click on this X and Y, and it brings up this amazing little editor here, right? That shows you exactly what you can just click where you want to place it on the screen. Now, I want my airplane to be about here. Yeah, perfect, right? That seems like a good starting position. Now, the other thing is you might notice my airplane is facing the wrong direction. So we're just going to click on my sprite. And then up here, I've got a little flip horizontal button that just turns my airplane to face the other way so that it's facing the right direction. There we go. So now I've got an airplane, we've positioned it. Now let's see if we can make it move. We're going to use this controller drawer here, and that's going to allow me to take input in order to move my plane. So I'm going to say move this top one here, right? That says move, not my sprite. We're going to move airplane. And then if I click this little plus button here, I can then use my buttons, and this VX and VY is sort of how quickly my plane can move. So let's see how that looks. And now I can use the sort of joystick if I want to move my plane around. But I can also use if I hover my mouse over the top of this, I can use the WASD keys or my arrow keys as well. So I can use all these different control inputs. Now this is great. I'm really happy with with how this is doing, but I don't actually want my plane to be able to move left because I'm going to move everything else for my game is going to be coming towards my plane. So I don't really want my plane to be able to move left and right. And so I'm going to change this, and instead of having an 100, right, for how quick that moves, I'm going to set it to 0, which means that, 1 second, just get it to 0, which means that no matter what happens, if I press the left and right keys, my plane will not move left and right. So if I click play, look, I now can't move it left and right. You see the sort of buttons highlighting there, but it will go up and down. Now, one last problem I need to fix with my character movement, and that is that my plane currently goes off screen, which is not great. That's not really what we want. We want it to kind of stay within the bounds of the screen. So I can use the sprite draw, and there is a special block just a bit further down here that says set my sprite to stay in the screen. So I'm going to move that underneath. I'm going to make sure that I choose airplane, which is really important. And I'm going to make sure that stay in screen is on. Great, perfect. So now if I come over here, I should see that my plane no longer goes out of the screen. Great. Right, now we have a background. We have a sprite that can move. Next thing we need to do is create some enemies. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start using our update function, right? So we've done our sort of start, we've set our game up. So now what we want to do is we want to generate some enemies for our game, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into game, and instead of choosing this on game update, I'm going to choose this on game update every, and then I can set a time. So basically what I'm going to say is every 2 seconds, I would like a enemy to spawn, right? And I want it to spawn somewhere on the right hand side. I'm going to choose randomly which height it does, and I want it to sort of move towards the character. So we're going to go into sprites again, and we're going to choose this time, instead of creating a new sprite, we're going to create what's called a projectile. So I'm going to get this right. We're going to set projectile. So that's the name of a new variable. And then I'm going to choose a picture. So go into my sort of editor and go into the gallery, and then we get to choose a picture for our enemies. So I'm going to choose this bat picture here because I think that makes sense that they would be flying in the sky and we don't want to hit them. And that's perfect. And then it's going to spawn from the side with VX. So that's again a speed. So it's going to be moving sort of 50 in the X direction and 50 in the Y direction. So that's up, and so X is sort of across and Y is up and down. So I don't want it to move in the Y direction. So I'm going to set that to 0, just like I did with my plane. And instead, I just want the bat to move across the screen. Now, the moment it's moving the wrong way, right? It's going from left to right, and I want it to come towards my plane. So I'm going to set that instead of to 50 to -50. Then we should see, hopefully, that our bat is coming in the right direction now, which is perfect. And now I just want it to sort of start from a random position on the side of the screen. So I'm going to go for sprites again, and then I'm going to grab this set position to, right? And instead of my sprite, we're going to choose projectile, right? Because that's the name of the sort of enemy that I've just created up here. And then I want to set it to the right at the edge here, right? So about 155 in the X. And then for the Y, instead of choosing sort of 56, and so they always, because you'll see here, look, they always come from the same point in the screen. We're going to add a bit of randomness, a bit of fun to our game. And we're going to choose a random position. So I'm going to go into math over here. And we're going to choose this pick random block. I'm going to say, right, pick a random position between 0, which is right at the top of the screen, and not 10, because that's only 10 pixels down. We're going to go for 112, which is right at the bottom of the screen, right? So now we should see that with each enemy, they sort of change position on the screen. And that'll just add a bit of challenge for our player. So that's perfect, right? So now we have enemies. That's great. We probably want our game to get a bit harder the faster we go, right? So the further along we are in the game, we probably want our enemies to start being a bit faster, and our everything to just go a bit faster and go a bit harder, right? So we're going to create a new variable. So I'm going to go into the variables thing. I'm going to say make a variable, and I'm going to call it speed. And then in our start block, I'm going to grab this set speed and stick it right at the bottom. And I'm going to say, right, let's go for minus 25. So that's the speed everything's going to start at, right? And then we're going to, as the game goes, so every time we create a new enemy, we're going to decrease speed by 1. So we're going to say -1. Because we want everything to go from right to left, we have to make sure it stays negative, right? So we're going to say variable, and then we're going to say change speed, and we're going to put that at the top of our update here. I'm going to say change speed by -1. And then the very last thing we need to do here is we just need to add in this speed variable into our X speed on our enemy. So now the enemies will get gradually quicker. So they're going to start quite slow, as you can see here, but they should, as they go, get quicker and quicker. And you might want the speed to change a bit quicker than that, right? So you might want to say, actually, let's make the speed change by -5 every time. And let's see how much quicker they go. All right, that's a little bit quicker. Yeah, that's good, isn't it? Oh, it's gone very quick, quite fast. So I'm going to I'll maybe go to like -2, right? So then that'll just set how quickly your game gets harder and harder. Perfect. Right. So now I've got enemies coming out the screen. We've got a plane that we can sort of fly up and down. So now what we need to do is, so we need to make it so that when we crash into these enemies, we lose lives. So we are going to use the info drawer here. So this is all the stuff that's sort of inbuilt into a game usually, right? So we have score, for example, and we have lives, right? So we're going to start by setting our lives to 3. So we'll put that in our start block, right? And then you should see when we do that, we get sort of 3 hearts up here. And next, what we're going to do is we're going to detect collisions. So this is another really important part of game design, which is when we have 2 sort of sprites, we want to be able to tell when they've collided with each other, because that allows us to sort of make them interact, right? It'd be pretty boring if we just sort of let them fly over us all the time. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to go into sprites here. And if we scroll down in sprite, we should see there's this overlaps section, and we want, right. So it says on sprite of kind player. So our airplane is a player, right? When it overlaps with another sprite of kind, so we don't want to check for another player. We want to check for projectiles, right? Because that's what our enemies are, right? Is they are projectiles. So when our player overlaps with a projectile, this block is going to go off, right? So the first thing we want to do is we want to go into info, and we're going to reduce our lives by 1, right? So I'm going to say, right, you should lose a life. Then we're also going to destroy. So if a bat has crashed into a plane, we're going to destroy that bat, right? So we're going to say, go into sprites. I'm going to say there should be a destroy here. But instead of destroying a sort of specific sprite, we're going to take this other sprite variable from up here, right? And we're going to drag it in there. So that just says when a sprite called of kind player overlaps with another sprite of kind projectile, we want you to destroy the other sprite, right? And so we should see now that when we crash into one of these, our lives go down, but the sprite is also destroyed. Perfect. So, and you can see that we go to sort of game over there as well when we lose all of our lives. That's perfect. Right. Okay. So now we have our enemies. They are projectiling. They are taking our lives off. So next we're going to do our power. We're going to do our score and our power ups. So we want to score, right? Because we want our score to increase as we go throughout the game. So we're going to go into info, and we're going to say, right, start the score at 0 at the beginning of the game. And then we need to decide how quickly we want our score to increase. So I'm going to use this on game update every block. And instead of so 500 milliseconds is half a second. I'm going to say every second I would like our player to get 1 score. Okay. So we should see here that our score is sort of going up by 1 for every second that we're in. Cool. Right. So there's a score. We've got a score now. Finally, we're going to do our sort of our power-ups. And then we'll show you how you can kind of add some extra niceness into the game. So we're going to go into game and we're going to grab another one of those update blocks. So what I'm going to say is every, let's go. So that's 5 seconds. That seems quite often. Let's say every 10 seconds, I would like a power up to spawn. So we're going to use an if statement for this because we want, so we got 2 types of power ups, didn't we? We had one that was going to give us a sort of bonus, like some extra points, and we've got one that's going to give us a life back. So let's talk about how we'll spawn them. So we're going to use an if statement, right? So we're going to say, pop the if statement in there, and I'm going to use another random number, right? So I'm going to say there's going to be a random number between 0 and 100, and if that random number is above 90, right? So that gives it about 10% chance of spawning. We'll create a life orb, and if not, we are going to create a bonus orb. So I'm going to go into my logic again, and I'm going to grab one of these sort of comparison blocks, right? So this is saying less than currently, but I want a sort of greater than symbol. So if we're greater than 90, and I need to get a random attribute, right? So pick a random number between 0 and 100, and if that's above 90, then we're going to spawn a new sprite. So we're going to spawn a new sprite, and we're going to call this, we need another new name, right? So we're going to call this one Life Orb. Okay. I'm then going to choose a sprite for this. So go into my gallery and I'll scroll down. They have these really nice sort of orbs over here. So I'm going to make this green one is going to be my life orb. And then I'm going to use the set the position to be on the, so not my sprite, I want it to be life orb. And I'm going to set the position to be sort of 155 in the X again. Sort of 155 in the X again. And then I want to create another sort of, so I want to use this random block again. So I'm just going to right click and click duplicate. So then allows me to stick that in there. And then I also want to set a velocity for this life orb, because at the moment it's not moving. You'll see over here it's not moving. So I'm also just going to set a speed. So I don't want it to move in the Y at all. And I'm going to duplicate my speed block so that the orbs also move faster as time progresses. Great. So I've got my life orbs are now spawning, right? So they should only spawn every sort of 10 seconds if that random number is over 90. Let's make our bonus orbs next. So I'm going to click this plus button to create an else, right? So if it's above 90, we're going to spawn a life orb. Otherwise, we're going to spawn a bonus orb. So we're going to say, right, set a new variable called bonus orb. We're going to click OK. We're going to change that sprite. So instead of being the green one, I'm going to make it an orange one. I've just noticed an error. We don't want our life orb to be of a type player because we want to detect that over here. So instead, I'm going to add a new kind, and we're going to call it life. And then for this one, we're going to add another new kind, and we're going to call it bonus. Great. So I'm then going to duplicate this block again. I could go in and grab them all again, but I'm too lazy to do that. So instead, I'm just going to sort of duplicate them And then make sure I change. It's really important that you make sure you change your variable name here, because otherwise we'll be sort of doing stuff with this one above. So those are all bonus orb. And again, we're going to pick a sort of random position for that to appear. And we'll give it a speed. So now let's just test our game, make sure it's working. So there's a bonus orb, look, and we're just going to grab a, oh, of course, right. That's because I haven't done anything for the collisions yet, right? So I need to, just like we did a collision with the bats, I also need to do a collision with my 2 power-ups. So I'm going to go into my sprite drawer again, and I'm going to grab this, right? So on sprite of kind player, when it overlaps with another sprite of kind life, we're going to use the change life by. So instead of changing life by -1, we're going to add 1 to life. And then we need to make sure that we also go in and say destroy other sprite. So we're going to grab that. I'm going to say destroy other sprite. This is really important because otherwise we'll just gain loads of lives because it stays overlapping for a really long time. So we need to make sure that we're destroying the things afterwards. Cool. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing again, but for our bonus sprite, right? So we're going to say, right, grab that sprite there, grab this block. So on sprite of kind player, when it overlaps with one of kind bonus, we're going to add 50 onto our score. So we're going to give them a little bonus for score. And then again, we have to make sure that we go in and we say destroy the sprite. Really important that we remember to do that. Great. So now let's just test this out. Oh, see, I just got that 50 bonus there. Perfect. Let's see if we can get a life orb. So I'm going to lose a life. There goes a life orb up there. Let's have a look. Cool. We got our life back. Amazing. There we go. So we've created a game, guys. That's it. We're done. We're ready. It's going great. Now, we probably want to, there's just a couple things we can do just to make this game look a little bit nicer and maybe sound a little bit nicer. Okay, so these are some bonuses that you might want to consider doing. So the first thing is, it looks cool with the bats coming at us, but you might have noticed in my example that I also had the background moving. And the way I did that was using an extension, right? So we're going to click on this extensions block here. And I'll open up this screen, gives us some options of different extensions. And what we want is one called background scroll. Where is that? We should be able to find it somewhere. There you go, arcade background scroll, right? So it's this one here. So if you click that, it'll import that extension into our game. And then we've just got this new drawer. So then we're going to say, right, I want to scroll my background, and this with VX and VY is again that sort of speed. So I'm going to put that into my on-game update because this is where I changed the speed, right? And you'll see, right, it is scrolling, but we don't want it to scroll in the Y direction at all. So we're going to say 0 because that's it's making me dizzy. So now we should see that it's just going to scroll in the X direction. And instead of just scrolling at a set speed, we're going to use our speed variable. I'm going to stick that in there as well. And so that should, so then I've got this scroll background. It's going to go at this speed in the X direction. And we should see it sort of increases and gets quicker and quicker as time goes by. Amazing. Right, so let's just do a couple last things to make our game look a bit nicer. So number one is let's add some sound effects, shall we? So if I go to music and then I have some sort of play, I have this play sound block here. So let's first of all add some sound. Now I haven't spaced out my blocks enough, which is very classic. Let's just make sure we've got enough space for all of this stuff that we're going to do. So when I hit a bat, let's choose a small crash. And let's see how that sounds when I hit a bat. We'll try and hit a bat just to test it out. That sounds good, right? Sounds like we're hitting a bat, doesn't it? Now let's do one for when we get a life, right? So when we get a life, we might want to play like, I don't know, what is that? Let's do magic wand for when we get a life, and let's add another one in for the bonus. That's like power. I think there's one called power up. Let's do that. Let's give that a test. That sounds great. And then we got a sound effect there. Perfect. See, we'll just wait and see if we can get a life orb to see how that one sounds. Now the life orbs are quite rare, right? So we just need to see when we get kind of lucky to get a life orb, because they don't come around all the time. It's only a sort of 1 in 10% chance that we spawn a life orb at any given moment.
A few minutes later.
That's okay. Right, we're not going to get one. That's fine. Oh, guys, so the other thing we might want to add, and this is just a bit of fun for you if you want to, is I think we can also create some effects. So if we go in here, again, I'm just going to space my blocks out, right? So now what we can do is we can also use some sort of particle effects, some sort of effects to make things look good, right? So what I want to say is every time we hit a bat, I'm going to do this disintegrate effect. And that's going to just create a sort of little spray of of bits that comes out, which is great. We'll do the same thing for these other ones. So when we get a life, let's do some hearts. And we'll make sure that happens on other sprites again. And then we'll do the same thing for our bonus. Say that should be some confetti on other sprite. Get rid of that. Cool. So now what we should see is that when we hit an orb, we get a little confetti effect. There you go. See those confetti? When we hit a bat, we get some little bits. Let's see if we can get a life orb finally. I really need one now, so hopefully the game will take pity on me because I've only got 1 life left.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
Now, what I could do now actually is I could make it more likely for us to get a life. So let's say instead of having to be greater than 90, let's say it has to be greater than 60 for a life orb to spawn. And then hopefully that'll be more, we'll be more likely to get a life orb. All right, so let's hit that. Let's see. There you go. So there's a life orb, right? So we've increased that chance. There you go. We got some nice hearts, and we got our little power up magic wand sound. Cool. So let's have one last little play. And this is our side-scrolling flying game, right? So here we go. We hit life orb. We can crash into some bats. We fly up and down. We stay within the screen, and that is our game. Now you could easily flavor this to be anything that suits your coolest project's entry, right? So instead of bats, it could be, say, space rocks and a spaceship with a space background. You can use the sprite editor to draw your own sprites and really make it your own. You've seen that we've done sort of player controls. We've done a bit of collision. We've done a score. We've done lives. We've done making things move on screen. So all of these components would be might be really useful for you to put into your own coolest projects entry. So that is, I hope that this has helped get you on board with MakeCode Arcade and that you're excited to get creating something for yourself. And that's our game. Back to you, Nick.
Thank you so much, Mac. That was a brilliant project. I love how flexible it is. You can really make it your own and take it in loads of different directions. I think that's a fantastic fit for coolest projects. Well done for powering through looking for those life orbs. I might do a cheeky edit to speed that part of the process up a little bit for people watching at home. Just before we wrap up, here's a quick reminder. If you want to enter Coolest projects, now is the time to do it. You can build on what Mac just showed you or browse our project site at projects.raspberrypi.org. We've got hundreds of step-by-step guides there to help you get inspired or go further. And if you've got any questions at all, please feel free to get in touch. Just drop us an email at hello@coolestprojects.org. We're here to help however we can. We really can't wait to see what you make, whether it's through the online showcase or at one of our in-person events. Thank you so much for joining us, and happy making. Goodbye.